Hi, welcome to Planet in the Word, and this is week 13. And this week's video is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones because there is just a lot of information I'm trying to give you because it's so interesting. There isn't any part of this that I want to skip, but it's going to take a little bit of time to lay the foundation and then make this in bite-sized pieces that are easy to swallow so that you walk away with a great understanding of what's going on here. This week, one of the things that we're going to study is Psalms 91. That's what we're going to read. And a few years ago, I was studying Psalm 91 myself when I stumbled across a podcast that Dr. Michael Heiser was giving. Now, he has his degree in biblical Hebrew. So when he goes through explaining what the Hebrew words mean, it's worth paying attention to. So a lot of the information that I'm giving you today come from that, along with some other sources that I have then added to them to try to create this concise explanation of what's actually going on in Psalm 91. And remember, Psalm 91, when Satan is trying to tempt Jesus, this is the passage that he quotes about Jesus being caught by the angels so that he wouldn't hurt himself, even if he threw himself down. So this passage is sort of unique in Scripture in that even Satan knew about it. This passage starts out, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." This passage has long been considered, and what the Talmud calls, a song of protection or psalms of protection. So it's not a big surprise when we find that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, this psalm appears. But what is unique is how this psalm appears. So when the Dead Sea Scrolls were dug up, this particular psalm was found in Cave 11 with what's called the Great Psalms document or scroll. In the Great Psalms scroll, it explains that David wrote over 4,050 psalms. Problem is, our modern Bible only has 150 of them, and the Septuagint only had 151. So it's no surprise when we discover that Psalm 91 was rolled up with 3 other psalms. Those do not appear in our Bible. Only Psalm 91 is one that we already have. But what all 4 of those psalms had in common was the fact that they were all psalms of protection, and specifically the other ones were dealing with demonic deities. The words like demon appear, and even the word exorcism and spirits. They're much more overt about talking about demonic activity than Psalm 91 is. So we sort of ask ourselves, what is that about? Well, let's put that aside for just a second and let me give you some context so that we can look at Psalm 91 and its consideration as a psalm of protection across history. Historically speaking, Psalm 91 occurs in history, and we have archaeology to back that up. The oldest finding of Psalm 91 was actually one that dates to the 1st century AD. It was found in Cairo, Egypt, and it was an amulet. Inside the amulet were some rolled up pieces of paper written in Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew. One of them was Psalm 91. The other 2 were prayers asking, and we actually have her name specified. It was Habiba bin Zurah, that she would be protected from all demonic influences, her and that of her unborn child. This amulet, they're unsure whether it was worn around the neck or actually worn across the belly, but it was supposed to protect her and her unborn child from any demonic activity, and it is very explicit, and it spells it out to the letter. Another time that we see Psalm 91 in Scripture, or outside of Scripture, archaeologically speaking, is a terra-cotta bowl that dates to 700 AD. And it's not unique. They've actually found several of these terracotta bowls that have Psalm 91 inscribed on them, and they go in a spiral from the outside in. And these bowls have been found placed upside down at the doorway of some of these houses. And the thought is that they thought the bowl would keep the demon contained. Psalm 91 would provide a barrier, and it would not allow any demonic activity to enter the house. So Psalm 91 occurs outside of the biblical text also, but always in conjunction with demonic activity. And as we read Psalm 91, that's not very evident to us. Yes, there's an enemy as a part of Psalm 91 and the protection of the Lord, but why every place that we see it actually put into practice is it attached to demonic usage? We don't see it because we're reading our Bible in English. But if you were reading in the original Hebrew, you would understand there's something different going on here. So we're going to try to take this, get out of our modern Western ideology, and try to shift to an ancient Eastern culture. So let's start talking about what's going on. And we're going to break down Psalm 91, but we're going to go all the way down to verses 5 and 6, and that's where we're going to focus on. So let me read those 2 verses to you, and then we'll start tearing them apart word for word. And they go like this. Psalm 91, verses 5 and 6. You will not be afraid of the terror by night, or the arrow that flies by day, of the pestilence that stalks in darkness, or the destruction that lays waste at noon. So the last foundational piece I need to give you as we go into this is the understanding that for this ancient Eastern culture, idol worship and demons were the same thing. Idols were nothing more than a physical vessel for demonic indwelling. That's what they were created for. So they represented the demonic activity that they were hoping would indwell in them. Now, whether that was they were hoping it would indwell the idol and stay away from them, or they were inviting the power of that demonic activity or that demon into their homes, we don't exactly know. But we do know that to the ancient Eastern culture, idols and demons equated each other. Okay, so now let's talk about those specific verses. You will not be afraid of the terror by night. Now, the terror by night would have been immediately obvious to anybody. Night terrors are demons. It's just simply saying demons. You will not be afraid of the night demons. Or the arrow that flies by day. Now, that's a little bit different. This is where we're going to spend a little bit of time. The arrow that flies by day means nothing to us. But to the ancient Eastern culture, they would have immediately recognized that as the ancient god deity Resheph. Now, Resheph is always pictured in ancient cultures, or almost always, carrying a bow and having arrows. And Resheph is best considered disease. In fact, his name actually means he who burns. Now, the Dictionary of Deities and Demons of the Bible, which is a real thing, and it's an academic work, not necessarily a Christian work, it's just historical information, states that Resheph was thought to be the gatekeeper of the underworld and to be responsible for disease he spread with his bow and arrows. Now, that makes sense when you think that they thought he was responsible for fever, because his name means he who burns. And actually, he comes up in so much extra biblical text. He is mentioned in Akkadian, he is mentioned in Egyptian, he's mentioned in Aramaic, Phoenician, Ugaritic, and Akkadian. All of these extra biblical sources mention the deity Resheph and how he is responsible for disease. So when we see the word Resheph, we can interpret that as disease. So the next one we're going to talk about is the pestilence that stalks in darkness. All right, that pestilence word. That pestilence word is the word debir. And sometimes it is translated as the word plague. In fact, we will see that in Scripture. In addition to that, Resheph and debir often occur together. Those two are kinsmen, as it were, and they will occur in Scriptures together. In fact, one of the places that happens is in Habakkuk 3:5. And let me read Habakkuk 3:5 to you in English, and then we'll talk about it as it appeared in Hebrew. It says this, and I love this translation. It's the New King James translation. It says, before him, and that is referring to God, before him went pestilence, and fever followed at his feet. So you could actually also read this. Before him went Debir, and Reshev followed at his feet. That is what it would say in Hebrew, and they would have understand. These are two demonic activities that occur together. So we have Debir, the same thing as plague. So the last one we're going to follow and talk about is the phrase, this destruction that lays waste at noon. That destruction word is the word ketev. So destruction equals ketev. Now, the Dictionary of Deities and Demons calls these three, Resheph, Debir, and Ketev, the triune of demonic powers. And they are always, well, they're considered to work together, but they are all under the god Mot. And Mot is across ancient scriptures and texts, and it's just the god of death. So death has these three henchmen, and they are Reshev, Debir, and Ketev. So what does Ketev do? Well, Ketev is destruction. And we actually see this listed also in scripture. This is in Hosea 13:14, and this is what it says. O death, where are your thorns? O Sheol, where is your sting? We could also read that, O death, where are, and that's Mot. O Mot, where is Debir? O Sheol, where is Ketev? And this is God actually sort of speaking here, and it's talking about, hey, death, Mot, where's Debir? Oh, underworld, where's Ketev? And the whole point is very similar to the Habakkuk passage. It's showing the supremacy of Yahweh over these deities. All of these deities actually answered to Yahweh. Even Mot has to answer to Yahweh. Though Debir walked in front of and Reshev walked behind, they were both being held on leashes by Yahweh. So this is why Psalms 91 to an ancient Eastern reader would have all been about demonic activity. They understood that these were the three henchmen of death, and they're all mentioned in Psalms 91, but they're mentioned because they all must bow to the knee of Yahweh. Yahweh has supreme authority over death, pestilence or disease, plague, and destruction. I hope you find this interesting. I think it really helps clarify what's actually going on in Psalms 91. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Have a good day. Bye-bye.